I never anticipated that a mere look exchanged over the table would transform my perception of myself for all time. On a Tuesday morning, the world began to stir. Commonplace in every regard. Coffee percolating, gentle rays filtering through the kitchen window, the subtle melody of birds chirping beyond. Wrapped in my robe, with my hair casually tied back, I savored the warmth of a chipped mug that had accompanied me since my college days. He occupied the seat opposite me, as he had during the previous few mornings. The man who is dating my mother. Serene. Many would argue he is far too young for her. Yet I never dared to question it until that very moment. I raised my gaze. He was already gazing in my direction, not out of curiosity, neither clumsy nor coincidental. It maintained a constant rhythm. Concentrated, cozy, took me by surprise, not due to its inappropriateness, but rather because, for the first time in what feels like an eternity, I sensed my presence was acknowledged, not in the capacity of a daughter, not merely as an ex-wife, not as the woman gathering fragments of a shattered union, only in myself. I blinked, cast my gaze downward in a swift motion, my heart pounding in a manner that took me aback. I reassured myself that it held no significance. Yet, an undeniable change had occurred. In the stillness of that kitchen, where the aroma of toast mingled with the rhythmic ticking of the wall clock, I came to a profound realization. The narrative I believed had reached its conclusion could very well be starting anew. Allow me to introduce myself. I am Ellen. I am 38 years old. Half a year ago, my marriage concluded in a manner that was both hushed and ruthlessly harsh. Silence, please. No broken shards. Only silence, and an unexpected revelation that took me by surprise. He was involved with another person, and somehow that pain cut deeper than if he'd raised his voice. For it signified that he had departed from me, emotionally, well before he ever gathered a single bag. I found myself at a crossroads, uncertain of the path ahead. Thus, I ventured to the place where countless souls seek solace in times of despair. Home. My mother embraced me with a warmth that only a mother can truly provide. Her embraces, those whispered conversations under the stars, the sweet aroma of her lemon sugar cookies, it brought solace. It didn't heal me, but it dulled the sharpness of the hurt. She had welcomed a new presence into her life as well. A gentleman by the name of Tom. Serene, articulate, compassionate. He appeared to be the kind of person who willingly immersed himself in the world of poetry. Initially, I perceived him as too young for her, but her smile seemed to blossom in his presence. Shared more laughter. I chose to keep my thoughts to myself. He melded into the very essence of the house, similar to the warmth of morning coffee or the gentle creak of the floorboards. Yet I could have never anticipated that one day he would weave himself into the fabric of my narrative as well. On certain evenings, I would find myself seated alone at the far end of the couch, wrapped in a blanket with a book that eluded my concentration. The home would resonate with gentle laughter, my mother's voice drifting through the corridors, intertwining with Tom's soothing, deep timbre. Joy radiated from them, her face illuminated with joy the moment he stepped into the room. He placed his hand softly on the small of her back, and she leaned into him instinctively, as if drawn by an invisible force. I once thought I had come to terms with it, yet the reality, it was as if I were an outsider in the very place that once cradled my early years. A silhouette looms in the corridor. An old photograph hangs on the wall, its colors dulled by time, forgotten by all who pass by. It was not their fault. Not quite. Yet, with each passing night, I felt myself diminishing. It was one evening when I noticed Tom's gaze fixed upon me. It was not merely a passing look. The silence enveloped the surroundings. Deliberate, it was as if he glimpsed a part of me that I had long forgotten existed. In that instant, something within me began to unravel. Neither desire nor anything close. Not yet. Yet, the painful awareness that perhaps I had lingered too long in the shadows, unseen. The hour approached midnight. I ventured into the kitchen, seeking a refreshing glass of water. Silence enveloped the house, broken only by the soft, rhythmic ticking of the ancient grandfather clock resonating through the corridor. As I strolled by the living room, the warm glow of the lamp caught my eye, still illuminating the space. I hesitated, and there they were, my mother and Tom, nestled together on the sofa, reminiscent of young lovers lost in their own world. She laughed, her head thrown back, eyes shimmering with delight. He observed her with a gentleness that halted my steps. He leaned closer, gently tucking a stray lock of hair behind her ear. Her fingers brushed against his hand, deliberate, intimate, as if they shared a dialect known solely to them. I remained motionless in the corridor, my breath shallow and hesitant. A fissure emerged within me. It's not jealousy, not in the strictest sense, yet a profound, lingering reminder of what once was, and of what I had not realized I still craved. To be acknowledged, to experience a gentle caress, to occupy the forefront of someone's mind, rather than lingering in the shadows of their considerations. Their moment was not misguided, yet it brought to mind the length of time that had passed since I felt desired, since anyone regarded me as if I held significance. I retreated gradually, careful not to intrude upon their moment. Yet that image etched itself into my mind, and in that moment, I realized the night had transformed something within me. Following that night, a change occurred. Tom appeared to be engaged in the mundane, lacking any overt actions, no grand displays, no untoward remarks. And yet, a shift had occurred in his perception of me. During breakfast the following morning, I noticed him gazing once more. Not a gaze that lingered, merely a fleeting, purposeful look before he turned his attention back to his coffee. "Did you sleep well?" he inquired, his voice a gentle murmur, imbued with warmth. I nodded, feigning nonchalance at what was, in truth, an unusual inquiry. Yet, my heart remained unconvinced. With each passing morning, his tone became gentler, and his words carried a deeper weight of contemplation. He inquired about my profession, the novels that captured my heart, and the melodies that once resonated with my soul. Questions my former spouse always seemed to overlook. One afternoon, after I had devoted hours in the kitchen assisting Mom with preparations for a family dinner, I found myself leaning against the counter, letting out a deep sigh. "Feeling weary?" he inquired from behind me. I inclined my head, subtly shifting my shoulder. "My back is in agony. Would you like my assistance?" Before I could respond, his hands were softly resting on my upper back. The pressure was gentle, courteous. Yet the warmth of his hands, the moment he hesitated just enough to make me feel embraced, it remained long after he had moved away. Words eluded me. I chose to remain silent. Once more, the morning found us seated opposite one another, enveloped in a quiet stillness. Mother had already departed for her job. In the stillness of the kitchen, the only sounds were the gentle clinking of spoons and the soft crackle of toast baking in the oven. At that moment it unfolded. His foot grazed against mine under the table, not with coercion, a gentle, intentional caress. I stood still, caught in a moment of sheer disbelief. He remained still. I did not either. The moment elongated, taut with an unvoiced tension. I ought to have taken a step back. I did not. It remained unspoken between us. Yet, following that moment, an understanding settled between us. That evening, the house felt unusually still. Mom had mentioned earlier she'd be going out to dinner with an old friend, a woman she hadn't seen in years. She had taken extra care with her hair, dabbed on her favorite perfume, and smiled at me in the hallway. "Don't wait up for me," she murmured softly, placing a hand on my shoulder before she departed. At that moment, it barely registered in my mind. Yet, as the door clicked shut behind her, an unusual stillness enveloped the house, a silence more profound than it had known all week. In the cozy embrace of the kitchen, Tom and I found ourselves seated, each cradling a warm mug of tea. The dim glow enveloped the room, while the rain outside resumed its gentle, melodic dance. The stillness that lingered between us held a certain ease. The space was brimming, weighty, well-known. He lingered at the sink, water cascading over his cup, before he turned to me, his voice a mere whisper, almost lost in the air. "You bear a striking resemblance to your mother, more than you might comprehend," he remarked. "Yet, there exists a singular distinction. She always ensured she was not left behind as you were." The words were devoid of pain. They nestled within my chest, akin to the truth I had evaded for months. I chose not to respond. He approached me, his steps deliberate and unhurried. "If you're weary," he murmured, his gaze locking onto mine, "I could cradle you." Only for a fleeting instant, I inclined my head in agreement. It was a subtle gesture, but it carried immense weight. He moved behind me, his arms encircling my shoulders with a tender embrace. It lacked any sense of possession. It lacked any hint of suggestion. The rhythm was unwavering, authentic, stillness. Initially, I remained on edge, uncertain. Slowly, my body began to yield. I reclined, tentatively at the outset, until the back of my head gently settled against his chest. His breath flowed steadily, deep and tranquil, unsteady yet distinctly mine. With my eyes gently shut, I embraced the stillness around me. In that ephemeral instant, I transcended the label of ex-wife. I was not the daughter coming back to mend. I existed as nothing more than a woman, to be embraced, to be acknowledged. His hands moved with the faintest of adjustments. His thumbs glided gently over the delicate curve of my collarbone. It may not have been deliberate, or perhaps it was. Yet it ignited a spark within me. In that moment, he leaned in gradually, allowing his cheek to graze against mine. There was no kiss, simply reach out, a breath exchanged between souls. And yet, there lingers a sense of something more. My entire universe seemed to shift. No limits had been transcended in the unfolding drama. Yet within me, a boundary had been breached. There was no turning back now. The embrace held on, a moment suspended in time, more prolonged than it ought to have been. Perhaps it has stretched beyond what either of us envisioned. Yet neither of us made a single move. The gentle rise and fall of his chest behind me created a soothing cadence, a steady rhythm of his breath that enveloped me in warmth. It anchored me. It left me feeling disquieted. I found myself reluctant to depart from that place. Not just yet. I inclined my head, ever so gently, allowing it to settle against his shoulder. The texture of his shirt enveloped him in warmth, a comforting presence that felt like home. He remained steadfast. He acted without a moment's pause. His hand ascended softly, following the contour of my jawline with delicate fingertips, before lingering at the edge of my cheek. It was not a gentle touch. It unfolded at a measured pace. It was intentional. A query posed in silence, and I responded not with words, but in the manner I leaned into that caress, in the way I allowed my eyes to flutter shut for just a heartbeat longer than necessary. No kiss was exchanged, yet the atmosphere that enveloped us transformed. It lacked the spark. It bore a weight far greater than that, burdened with significance, with recollection, driven by necessity. When he ultimately released his grip, it was not abrupt. It was meticulous, unhurried, yet a fragment of my being lingered in his embrace, even after he had withdrawn. The ensuing silence held no awkwardness. It held a reverence all its own. As I stood there, attempting to calm my breath, I realized we had crossed a threshold, perhaps not in form, but in essence. The following morning carried an unmistakable sense of change. I attempted to mask the truth, combed my hair, donned a cozy sweater, brewed coffee just as I routinely did. Yet within, I had transformed. The atmosphere in the kitchen was thick with an unnameable tension, as if unvoiced thoughts hovered in the shadows of the space. We gathered around the breakfast table, my mother, Tom, and I. With a light-hearted spirit, she hummed a tune to herself while spreading butter on her toast. Tom sat opposite me, serene yet poised. My gaze remained fixed upon my plate. Yet, in that moment it occurred. I raised my gaze. He was already gazing in my direction. It was merely a fleeting look, an instant, perhaps even shorter. Yet it was far from vacant. His eyes held a gentle softness. "No, weighty," it whispered. "I remember." And my eyes, betraying my thoughts, replied, "So do I." At that instant, my mother pivoted from the counter, cradling her mug in hand. She glimpsed the final flicker of the gaze, the reverberation of an entity that was never meant to be. Silence enveloped her, did not frown, yet a shift occurred in her expression. A brief glimmer, hardly anything at all, yet I beheld it. The ensuing silence hung heavily in the air. The sound of her spoon striking the cup resonated like a bell tolling in a quiet church. I experienced a sense of diminutiveness, revealed, filled with a sense of shame, like a young soul who reached for something delicate, aware of its potential to shatter. I am aware that what I experienced was not as it should have been. I recognized that it was an act of selfishness, yet it was undeniably real. In that brief instant, I was no longer the woman abandoned. I was not the daughter who lingered in the shadows. I was never a mere error or a burden to anyone. I simply existed as myself, and I was observed, not observed, unacceptable, yet, in the depths of perception, by an individual who recognized more than merely the surface of my being. The gaze, the caress, romance was not their focus. They were not concerned with treachery. They revolved around the act of remembering. Acknowledgement, desire, a longing I had yet to acknowledge within myself emerged unexpectedly, taking form in the gentle presence of a quiet man, pouring tea and inquiring about my rest. I chose not to delve deeper into the matter. I was unable to, yet that moment, that quiet connection beneath the soft glow of the kitchen light, it transformed me. Perhaps it was misguided. Perhaps it was merely inconsequential. Yet for me it sufficed, a fragment of solace to grasp during the shadowy hours of the night. Not to provide justification, yet to serve as a reminder that I still existed. That somewhere, beneath the weight of sorrow and the quietude, I remained present. At times, the experiences that transform us profoundly arrive quietly, without fanfare or bold proclamations. At times, they come quietly, in a fleeting look shared over a table, a hand softly placed upon your shoulder, a breath exchanged in the delicate void between two souls who were never meant to experience emotion, yet did. Love does not always manifest in the ways we anticipate, or the resolution we believe we are entitled to. Yet, every now and then, we encounter something entirely different, a gentle nudge to recall that we remain present. The sensation lingers within us, that we remain present. If this tale awakens something within you, in the stillness of an inexplicable moment, if you've ever felt a sense of solitude, know that you are not alone. Share your thoughts, unveil your narrative when you feel prepared. If you're interested in discovering more tales of this nature, I sincerely hope you'll consider subscribing. For in those moments, a mere voice in the shadows can resonate, softly declaring, "I see you."